What do you think is really happening inside your body when you don't eat? And how long does it actually take before the self-repair mode even switches on? Most people imagine nothing more than a growling stomach, stubborn fat, and a brain desperately craving sugar. But inside, a completely different story is unfolding. When fasting lasts long enough, your body doesn't just survive. It begins to clean house, repair damage, and rebuild itself from within. This process is called autophagy. It sounds dark, but it means something remarkable. Tiny repair crews inside your cells break down defective components, recycle energy, and replace what no longer works. And here's the surprising part. Autophagy doesn't start just because you skip a meal. Not after breakfast, not after a light dinner. It begins only after a precise metabolic switch, when insulin drops, AMPK and sirtuins activate, and your body shifts from digesting to maintenance. This video focuses on the critical question: at which hour does autophagy truly begin? Are 16 hours enough? Is 24 hours a real reset? And when does fasting become dangerous? Because if your body has a hidden self-healing switch, would you press it consciously? Autophagy is often portrayed as something mysterious, as something only extreme fasters can reach, as a kind of biological superpower mode, somewhere between hunger and enlightenment. But the truth is far more sober, and at the same time, fascinating. Autophagy is not an emergency program. It is a fundamental maintenance mechanism that every single cell in your body has mastered for millions of years. Every cell produces waste every day: misfolded proteins, damaged enzymes, exhausted mitochondria, small defects that seem harmless on their own, but accumulate over time. If this cellular waste is not removed, energy production suffers first, then inflammation regulation, and in the long run, aging accelerates. Under normal conditions, your body doesn't have time for this, because as long as food keeps coming in, digestion takes priority. Insulin remains elevated. Growth and storage dominate. Repair? Postponed for later. Fasting changes exactly this priority. As soon as no new energy arrives from the outside, your metabolism asks a decisive question. If nothing new is coming, what can we optimize internally? And that is precisely where the path toward autophagy begins. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, like a light slowly getting brighter. To understand when this process truly starts, fasting must not be viewed emotionally, but temporally, hour by hour, signal by signal. Because autophagy is not a switch, it is a sequence. And this sequence begins much earlier and much more quietly than most people expect. In the next section comes the crucial entry point. What happens in the first hours after the last meal, and why autophagy is still asleep there. Right after your last meal, nothing spectacular happens. No reset, no cleansing, no cellular magic. Your body is busy, very busy. In the first 0 to 4 hours, it is in classic digestion mode. Glucose from food floods the bloodstream. Insulin rises and signals. Energy is abundant. Cells absorb sugar. The liver stores excess as glycogen. Fat cells fill their reserves. In this state, autophagy has no priority. Why repair when plenty of new energy is available? Between 4 and 8 hours after eating, the picture slowly begins to change. Blood sugar drops. Insulin falls step by step. Your body now relies more heavily on stored energy, primarily liver glycogen, the quickly accessible sugar reserve. Many people already mistake this moment for fasting, but metabolically, the system is still in supply mode. Autophagy remains in the background, inactive but alert. It only becomes interesting between 8 and 12 hours. The liver's glycogen stores are nearing depletion. Insulin is significantly lower, and your body begins to ask a quiet but decisive question. Is more coming, or do we need to switch internally? Hormones like glucagon rise. Fat metabolism ramps up. But autophagy? Still only a whisper. This is where many people stop. Hunger appears. Habit screams. But biologically speaking, your body is only standing at the threshold, because autophagy does not begin where it becomes uncomfortable. It begins where the body realizes This pause is real, and that realization occurs after the 12-hour mark. In the next section begins the true turning point, the moment when repair signals are activated and autophagy quietly awakens. At some point after the 12-hour mark, the internal communication of your body fundamentally changes. Not dramatically, not with alarms, but silently, at the molecular level. Insulin has now dropped significantly. Glucagon takes the lead. The liver has used most of its glycogen, and fat increasingly becomes the primary energy source. Now something decisive happens. Your body recognizes that this eating pause is not accidental, and that is exactly when new signals step onto the stage. Cellular sensors like AMPK, the energy guardian, are activated. It measures a simple ratio: how much energy is available and how much is being used. The answer: energy is limited. Efficiency matters more than growth. At the same time, sirtuins appear, proteins evolutionarily designed to protect cells during times of scarcity. They downregulate unnecessary processes and promote repair mechanisms. And here, right here, autophagy awakens, not as an explosion, but as a quiet beginning. Damaged proteins are tagged. Malfunctioning cellular components are identified. The first repair crews begin cleaning up. Most people feel nothing. Maybe a bit of clarity, maybe nothing at all. Because autophagy does not work loudly. It is like a night crew that comes when no one is watching. This phase is crucial because it shows autophagy is not an all-or-nothing state. It is a process that increases in intensity with the duration of fasting. Those who stop here have opened the door. Those who continue step into the room. And that is exactly what happens at hour 16. In the next section begins the phase many call the real start, when autophagy moves from whisper to work. When your fast reaches the 16-hour mark, something remarkable happens, even if it looks unspectacular from the outside. Maybe the body feels tired, maybe hunger comes in waves, or maybe there is suddenly clarity. But inside, your body has crossed a biological threshold. Autophagy is no longer a quiet side program. It becomes a central process. Inside your cells, tiny structures form, so-called autophagosomes, which can be imagined as biological trash bags. They collect damaged proteins, outdated enzymes, and faulty cellular components. These are then transported to lysosomes, the recycling centers of the cell, where everything is broken down and reused. Especially affected: mitochondria, the power plants of your cells. Defective, inefficient mitochondria produce less energy and more oxidative stress. Autophagy removes them, a process known as metaphagy. The result is not immediate muscle gain or weight loss, but something more subtle: more efficient energy production, reduced inflammation, more stable cellular function. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes sense. Our ancestors regularly experienced periods without food. A body that only conserved energy during these times would deteriorate. A body that repaired and optimized instead survived longer. And that is exactly what happens here. Around the 24-hour mark, this process reaches a new intensity. Autophagy now runs systematically, not just surface-level cleanup, but deep maintenance. But as effectiveness increases, so does responsibility. Because beyond this point, a new question arises. When does strategic fasting end, and when does stress begin? In the next section, we move to the next level: 36 hours of fasting, maximum repair or a narrow edge. Beyond the 24-hour mark, the internal dynamics shift again. Not abruptly, but noticeably. At least for the body. Glucose availability is now minimal. Insulin remains low. Ketone bodies become the dominant energy source for brain and muscles, and autophagy reaches a high level of activity. In this phase, it is no longer just about clearing small defects. Now deeper reconstruction begins. One particularly important process moves to the foreground: metaphagy. Old, inefficient mitochondria are selectively broken down. Why? Because damaged power plants waste energy and promote inflammation. The body chooses quality over quantity. At the same time, growth hormone levels rise significantly, in some studies, by several fold. This hormone protects muscle tissue, supports fat loss, and promotes repair processes. A seeming contradiction, not eating, yet building. Biologically, this makes sense, because during times without food, functional tissue must not be carelessly lost. Many people report unusual mental clarity in this window. Thoughts feel organized, stimuli less overwhelming. The brain runs on a clean, ketone-based energy system, efficient and stable. But this is exactly where a fine line exists. Because autophagy is targeted repair, it works only as long as the body perceives the situation as controlled. If fasting lasts too long, the signal flips. Stress hormones like cortisol begin to rise. The body no longer asks, what can we optimize? But how do we survive? And with that, everything changes. Autophagy decreases. Muscle breakdown can begin. The immune system is downregulated. This is the moment when fasting stops being regenerative and becomes a burden. That is why the decisive insight is not, how long can one fast at maximum? But, where is the personal point at which repair turns into stress? In the next section, this boundary is clearly drawn. Fasting versus starvation. Two states that look identical from the outside, but are biological opposites. From the outside, they look the same. No food, empty plate, same hours on the clock. But biologically, fasting and starvation could hardly be more different. Fasting is intentional, time-limited, recognized by the nervous system as a controlled pause. Starvation, on the other hand, is an emergency, uncontrolled, and for the body, a clear signal, danger. During fasting, a person tells their body, nothing is coming in right now. Use the time to clean up. During starvation, the body hears something completely different. Nothing is coming in, and maybe never again. And this interpretation decides everything. As long as fasting is perceived as safe, repair programs remain active. Autophagy runs. Growth hormone protects muscle. The immune system remains functional. But once this perception shifts, the strategy changes. Cortisol rises. The body begins using muscle protein for energy. The immune system powers down to save energy. Repair is shut off. Survival takes over. Autophagy is intelligent self-healing. Starvation is biological panic. The difference is not just the number of hours. It lies in context, preparation, and physical condition. A trained metabolism with sufficient fat reserves, good sleep quality, and low inflammation tolerates longer fasting better. A stressed, undernourished body reaches the limit much sooner. That is why knowledge matters here. Not ambition, not willpower. Fasting is not a competition. It is a dialogue with your own body. And those who do not listen miss the warning signals. But autophagy does not end at the fasting clock. In the final section comes the most important insight of all. Autophagy is not a one-time event. It is a rhythm. And this rhythm determines whether fasting heals or harms in the long run. Autophagy is not a spectacular, exceptional state that you reach once and then check off. It is a biological rhythm, a quiet process that intensifies whenever the body is given space for it. Every day, waste products form inside your cells. Misfolded proteins, damaged mitochondria, molecular debris. Without regular cleaning, these residues accumulate. Inflammation rises, energy drops, aging accelerates. Fasting is the most direct way to trigger this cleaning process, but not the only one. Even regular eating pauses, such as a 16-to-8 rhythm, give autophagy enough time to work quietly. A 24-hour fast can deepen these processes. Longer phases, such as 36 hours, belong in experienced hands, conscious, prepared, and rare. What matters is not how long one fasts once. What matters is how regularly the body is allowed to switch into repair mode. Movement, especially short, intense exertion, activates similar signaling pathways. Deep sleep phases enhance nighttime repair. Certain plant compounds support the same energy sensors. Autophagy responds to lifestyle, not extremes. The biggest mistake is believing one must suffer to benefit. The body rewards consistency, not self-punishment. And this brings us back to the opening question. How long do you have to fast to trigger autophagy? The honest answer is, Not as long as many think, but long enough for the body to trust. Fasting is not an escape from food. It is a conscious pause for repair. To conclude, an invitation remains. Observe your body, respect its signals, and use fasting not as a battle, but as a tool. If this video opened new perspectives, share your experiences in the comments. And if you're interested in what fasting does to the brain, liver, or heart, take a look at the next videos. Because the most fascinating processes don't happen on the plate, but in the hours between. An important note at the end: fasting, and therefore autophagy, is not medical advice and not a universal prescription. People with eating disorders, underweight, chronic illnesses, hormonal imbalances, pregnant or breastfeeding individuals should not fast without medical supervision. The body is not an experiment. It is a system with history, limits, and individual needs. Autophagy is powerful, but only when used with respect. Not as a trend, not as a dare, but as a conscious tool embedded in sleep, movement, nutrition, and recovery. If you stayed until here, then you're not just interested in when autophagy begins, but in how your body truly works. Share in the comments. Have you ever fasted? At which hour did you notice changes or consciously stop? And if you want to understand more deeply what fasting does to the brain, liver, heart, or hormones, then subscribe to the channel, because real health does not come from extremes, but from understanding. The next story begins exactly where the last meal ends. Autophagy is not an extreme. It is a rhythm. If you want to understand what fasting does to your brain, your liver, or your heart, click here for the next video. At which fasting length did you personally notice changes? 16, 24, or 36 hours? Or do you activate autophagy more through movement, sleep, and nutrition? Share your experience, factual, respectful, without extremes.